Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. We are live on a Thursday morning this week, always bouncing around between Thursday and Friday. But hey, maybe you're listening to it later, so it doesn't matter to you. But we are live Thursday morning. It is the final episode in our conference review, year in review, look back, state of the program, etc. series. We're talking SEC today, SEC basketball, an incredible season, arguably the best conference ever. We're excited to discuss that. But I am your host to discuss and take you through the SEC. I'm Jim Root. I'm joined by Kai McEwen and Matt Cox, two sharp ball knowers. We'll look back on our preseason pod, our thoughts, the good, the bad, and the ugly from our preseason takes. And there's some of all of that mixed in here. Before we get into it, Kai, before we discuss the SEC, how are you feeling on this fine morning?
Jim, I'm doing good. Excited that it's Friday Eve. Friday
Oh,
for all
you, you.
you corporate cats out there. Welcome to Friday Eve. Jim, I'm doing fine. I just listened to our preseason SEC podcast. Some good takes, some bad takes, and I'm excited to break them down. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Kai. Hello, Jim. SEC, where it just means more, where they just have more money, more support, more resources, and a lot more wins than everyone else last year. I think that's going to continue. I think the SEC dominance in college basketball is not a fluke. I think it's real.
Not a
So
flash in the pan, says Matthew. We'll
hot
see.
take.
It's we
Boom.
are
Big betting
we're
engine
moving
take
to
to start
another
us.
new era though with the revenue sharing. So this kind of cowboy world, frontier world of just NIL unlimited may have been prime for the SEC. We'll see how the new era shapes up for the conference, if that's really going to be its dominance continued or not. But of course, we'll start with the Roots Roundup. We'll give you a little update on news and notes. There are a couple big college basketball related stories over the last week that we'll discuss. Then we'll get to our SEC discussion and finally one review that is of the one star variety. So stick around for that. You can hear us get roasted, I guess. It's an interesting review. It's weird. So we'll get to that at the very end of the pod if you stick around. But first, let's get through our intro here. A little shout out to Jake Pitty, aka Joe Paskov, the composer of our intro tunes. We love to jam to that as the episode gets started. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 3MW_CBB. That is the hub for all of our content. You can find out what we're doing or we're writing, what we're podcasting about at that specific venue. And the writing has begun. The preseason preview process has begun. We are getting an assist from our guy Will Warren this year, so it's not going to be 100% three-man weave, but we are very confident the quality will maintain as we enter a new era with Trilly Donovan's Discord and his website. So join that, the burner, get behind the paywall here. It is currently $6 a month, but is going to go up shortly because of the content that he's adding. A new website, a lot of places to, or a lot of people helping to push out content, writing a new podcast coming there. So get in now while you can at the burner. The Discord, the link should be in the description of the video or of the podcast you're listening to. Great place to discuss ball. We've got AMAs going on in there. So check that out. And if you're listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, etc., we would love it if you leave a review. Or if you're watching live on YouTube, hey, thanks for stopping by. If you're not, feel free to follow us on there. You can always watch us live on Thursday, Friday morning, whenever we're recording on our YouTube channel. See our bright, smiling faces. So check that out if you'd like. And yeah, as I mentioned, the Discord, that is a big project that we're working on. A lot to come. Probably been reading our previews if you've heard of the Three Man Weave for over a decade now. This will be our 11th year of previews. Holy
Wild.
cow.
Wild.
Kai, we know the team's like the back of our hand now, don't we?
The hell is that? Keep
Yeah.
adding
Oh,
new
God.
ones, though, Jim. Keep us on our toes.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep, get in there. The previews will be rolling out behind the paywall in within that site/Discord. We encourage you to get in early and get familiar with it. But that's it. That is our intro. Let's get into our news and notes section, Roots Roundup, which Matthew is sponsored by our friends, our beloved sponsors at CBB Analytics.
That's right, Jim. And for those of you who have already joined the Discord and should do so in the coming months, if you haven't already, you'll see a ton of CVB analytics woven throughout our stuff. The previews primarily, you've already seen it if you've been following our portal analysis for the big fish that we went through pretty heavily in the month of May. Now, as we get prepped for our previews, it's going to be a Bible, a staple for a crutch for me, Kai, in terms of sources, player, team shot charts, and what I like most about all of this is it's sliceable and diceable, contextualized by how teams, players perform against certain competition. And an amazing tool again for looking at D2, D3 guys. I continue to say that's one of the best places to go to get some info on these coaches, these players coming up from those lower levels who, frankly, you have no idea about unless you can go on Synergy, which is now $1 million a month to be a part of, or others. So make sure you guys sign up today. Just a quick trivia question from the insights at CUB Analytics to tie this off, Kai. SEC team, the best mid-range 2-point shooting team in college basketball was in the SEC last year. Can you name this team? At 45%, just to
Wow.
contextualize, that's
The
not
best
really
mid-range field goal percentage?
Just 45% as a team. I think it was 99th percentile, top 5 overall.
My guess is Ole Miss.
Actually, a worse team, surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly.
Vanderbilt.
Texas.
Wow. Go Tigers, LSU.
Okay.
How about that?
I guess
45% mid-range, which they had some kind of mid-range chuckers that were, no one paid attention because they weren't very good. But again, hey, folks, sign up today. That's cbanalytics.com. Weave, 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 if I spell it right, $40 off subscription when you sign up today. That's cbbanalytics.com, Jim.
Well done, Matthew. Key headlines, boys. The big one that broke, I believe it was yesterday, and we excitedly read through the changes. Maybe it was Tuesday. Rule changes in the world of college basketball progress, Kai. We'll start there. The end of games, interminable, just endless reviews, go to the monitor, etc. We will no longer have out of bounds reviews. So this is good. We are moving to a challenge system. Coaches get one for the entire game. You can use it whenever you want. It's typically, I would imagine, going to be out of bounds that gets challenged. But if you do win it, you get a second one. So there is a challenge system now. It means we don't have to review every single little out of bounds call. You've got to save it. You've got to use this properly as a coach, Kai, which is going to be great fodder for making fun of like, oh, you reviewed a out of bounds call with 12 minutes left in the first half that was a 50-50 toss up. We're going to dig into that. But this is great progress, Kai. It's at least they hear us. They hear what gets complained about with the sport, and they're making efforts to tweak it, just like they did with block charge, which I've had like almost no issue with over the past year now.
Yeah, it's weird. The NCAA is listening. They're doing correct things all of a sudden, which is fantastic.
That's the succession.
Yeah.
We are listening.
They are. This is great. Yeah, because the number one complaint last year from college basketball fans and casuals alike was the ends of games take years. It's so frustrating. Even great games get turned into just absolute slop because we're stopping the clock every couple seconds to review a ball that went out of bounds, to review a goaltend, and all this other crap. I understand that you can still review like timing issues, Jim, in the last 2 minutes, which unfortunately is pretty closely tied to out of bounds, if you know what I mean. So I'm a little bit skeptical this is going to fix it 100%, but it is a step in the right direction. Very big fan. And I'm not sure you mentioned, but the flagrant stuff is what I'm really excited about. No more ball hits. No more ball hits.
Yeah, I was just starting with the challenge stuff. There's other changes as well that we'll get to. But yeah, Matthew, as Kai mentions, there's still going to be late like complaints for, oh, go check the clock because it's a free timeout for coaches. Like coaches are going to beg for that. Like, go look at this, go look at that, anything that's a free timeout. But they can't even ask for out of bounds unless they have a challenge left, which is wonderful news. And yes, Matt, as Kai referred to, the automatic ejection, if you make even the slightest contact with genitalia, is finally gone. The JT Toppin ejection at Houston was one of the big egregious examples. Kai, our Mizzou Tigers lost Tony Perkins in their win at Florida because of a just like square up triple threat position that brushed some testicles. So we're glad that there's a little bit of discretion instituted here, Matt, because this is another one that like made us pull our hair out where it was there was no room for leeway for the refs as they called it.
Yeah, this one doesn't like, I don't know. I'm not as worried about this one. I just to clarify, if you have a challenge, you win that challenge, you retain it. Is there an expiration? It's so like if you go bad 1,000 on challenges.
I don't believe you can just continually do it. I think it's a max of 2, but
the
wording is a little
vague
in the announcement.
Okay. I do. That's fine because I don't like have a ton of challenges, but I do like the idea that like if the refs are so bad and the coach has a couple of like obvious ones early in the game that he can just use. No, that was stupid. Use those and retain those. But if there are two terrible calls in the first half and you have to use those, you're right. There's some unfortunate. But again, we're in a better place than we were. Any nitpicking beyond that is just unnecessary at this point. Nice job, NCAA
Yeah,
and
there's going to
associates.
be all kinds of players asking for a review after every single out of bounds. It just like, oh, I think it was off the other guy, like just constant. So enjoy the party of that. That's going to be maddening. The one loophole they did not close is the stupid we auto review goaltending. And so if it wasn't actually goaltending and the team got the ball back, they still lose that possession now, which is maddening to me. I still think there's a
Yeah,
way
that's a
to fix
huge loop.
that,
Yep.
and you don't have to auto call goaltending and just rotate or just come back to it. So that bothers me a little bit, but they obviously, can't fix everything. It's we're getting there step by step. So that one's still keeping an eye on. But if we can speed up ends of games, spend a little less time at the monitor, it is way better for the sport, and it won't be a constant chorus of complaints at the end of games when that's the case only.
I'm curious how much refs proactively go to the monitor to review stuff now that this is like, even though the rules don't explicitly say you can only do so many, but just the messaging, I wonder if we just see a lot less prompted reviews by the
And there
zebras.
there is like a point of emphasis to speed up end of games.
Yeah, right.
So I would hope that if it's 30 seconds left and the difference is it going to be 30.5 or 31.1? Like that is a difference without a distinction without a difference. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Like you have enough time to adjust. It's not 1.6 versus 2.2. Those are very different. But zero point 0.6 seconds when there's a lot of time left doesn't matter. Just stick with what's on the clock and go forward. So hopefully they're not going to be looking at every single thing that gets asked about it because of the point of emphasis. Just move on. Let's move on and play basketball and focus on that. So encouraging stuff out of the NCAA. Kai?
I don't love continuation, but we don't have to get into the can of worms, Jim.
Yeah, and I don't know like if it's exactly going to be NBA continuation. This is one that I want to see in practice and how it's played out. I think one of the things wondered about in our Discord by ourselves and Kevin Sweeney is there is a continuation-esque rule in these rule changes. What happens with fouling up three? Because if they don't dribble again and start their shooting motion after they get fouled, is that going to be a shooting foul? And basically take that strategy out of the playbook for coaches because I mean guys when they see it coming they start the shooting motion and oftentimes refs just say well it was not really a shooting foul so we'll call it on the floor but by this new rule it could all be a three-shot foul which would take that strategy out of the book completely which we'll see how this
I,
one's actually
if you're a
used
coach,
and
Jim,
officiated.
would you be a 3 point? I think I would not foul up three. I think I would just not want to even expose myself to the randomness and absurdity of
Yeah,
this.
I'd let another coach be the guinea pig and see how it gets called before I risk a game at the end
I
by
just wouldn't
fouling
do
up
it.
three. And they're like, new rule says this is a shooting foul. And you're like, well, shit, I didn't realize that's how it would be adjudicated. So yeah, I don't want to be the guinea pig on that. All right. The other big announcement is that the House settlement between the NCAA and its conferences passed. This is only tangentially related to college basketball, but schools have to pay 10 years of damages, $2.8 billion to current and former athletes. That's going to be paid out over 10 years. You can now pay schools directly or pay players directly via revenue sharing. It's not just NIL. They're slowly going to implement roster limits, 15 spots in college basketball. So not like 13 scholarship players and 10 walk-ons. That can't happen. I'm curious what they do with military institutions because Air Force and Navy and Army always have like
Yeah,
27
right.
guys on their roster. So we'll keep an eye on that. But then the biggest thing is if you're paying NIL outside of revenue sharing, anything in excess of $600 has to go through this NIL Go organization, the college basketball or the college sports commission. It's a big Deloitte endeavor, Kai.
I know.
Shout out
Kai,
to
aren't you
accounting
pissed?
firm
Our
backgrounds.
former, well, yeah, you Jim, you're also loyal to EY, PwC over here. I feel like we're always bummed to see our big four not
Yeah.
win such important contracts. I know that you guys lost some sleep over this, as I know I did myself. So it's a shame.
They're losers.
Like
This
sucks.
rule's ridiculous. I can't believe this is a thing. Let's bring the
This is
audit firm in to determine the fair value of athletes. It's a
Yeah,
horrible
it's
idea.
like
Horrible
it
idea.
can't be pay for play as ruled by this NIL Go group. Has to be a valid business purpose and a reasonable range of compensation. But I have no idea how they're going to enforce this, judge this. It just creates the new black market for, teams that want to go above and beyond their 20.5 million revenue share. They'll find a way to sneak things through here. I did think, guys, if I get back into the corporate world, maybe I'll apply to Deloitte. Be like, hey, I've got some college
Yeah,
sports
on this
expertise and
project.
accounting
Yeah.
background. Get me on the NIL Go Commission. We'll see how that happens. But that is your general summary of the House settlement. We'll kind of track how it impacts college hoops going forward. I wouldn't imagine it's going to be a ton of immediate impact, but it's out there. So just keeping you informed. The recruiting world, guys, should we start doing 2026 recruits? I don't want to, but it's probably about time. It's
Mm,
2025 is mostly wrapped up. Let's call it at the start of July, we'll start tracking
Okay.
2026
That's fair,
commitments.
Jim.
So
That's fair.
we're gonna kick that can down the road for another few weeks. Transfer news, yes, I would say next week is our portal winners and losers. Kind of the dust has fully settled. We'll talk about net portal activity, the best transfers in, best transfers, or the teams that lost the most talent. Finally, going to get into that and summarize it. I mean, with the amount of player movement, 1,500 players or whatever, I've got basically no high major graded players left available in the portal with Desmond Claude picking Washington. So it does seem like a perfect time to do that, especially in June as teams now scramble to fill in their remaining roster holes with international players. That's the new market. Other random news and notes. The inaugural Dick Vitale Invitational has been announced, guys. Duke versus Texas on November 4th. That is the second night of the season for those that are keeping track in Charlotte. Matthew, I love this. An iconic name, personality in the sport of college basketball. Helped grow the game when it was, he was the guy as an ESPN color commentator. He still loves the sport. He's, I believe, in full remission now with his cancer. So it's going to be great to have him there. And this should be an enduring tradition in the sport of college basketball that has his name on it and will forever commemorate his legacy.
yeah, I hope it lives on. Hope we get maybe a even bigger field going forward. Make it more of a let's make it more of a bracket or a I don't know a series of games. But yeah, I mean this is a 1,000% approval rating from all who love our esteemed game.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Jimmy V Classic. They play like back to back at Madison Square Garden. Let's turn this into a really big event, back to back games. This is the first one, and it's a great matchup. I hope it does continue to grow and put great honor on old Dickie V's name. Speaking of announcements or matchups announced, Kai, the SEC ACC Challenge matchups have been announced. For those that have somehow forgotten, the SEC won 14-2 last year, an absolute slaughter relevant to our discussion here with the SEC on the pod. Some great headliners: Florida at Duke, Louisville at Arkansas, John Calipari taking on Louisville again, UNC at Kentucky, big blue blood battle, typically a CBS Sports Classic uh, type of matchup there. NC State at Auburn, Will Wade versus Bruce Pearl, two guys that had formerly been kicked out of the sport for recruiting stuff and are now back in the game. That's a fun little outlaw matchup. Kai, my one issue with the matchups was Syracuse, Tennessee again. Like they've played 2 straight years if you include Maui. Tennessee's won by 17 and 26. Like, we don't need that orange matchup again. But by and large,
That's that.
a great event.
Yeah, Mizzou has Notre Dame. It's a great opportunity for us, Jim, to drive an hour-ish to South Bend and catch our Tigers in the arena that we've actually been to before. Yeah, excited for the challenge. I don't think it'll be 14-2. I do think it'll be SEC emerging as the winner.
I'll say 12-4,
12 and
Matthew.
4.
I think
Wow.
the SEC still stomps.
I think the ACC's worried about this. Like, man, we really got ourselves in bed with the dance partner that we're just not as good at right now. ACC should be better this year for sure, but like, man, the gap is astronomical right now, and I think it could certainly be in a semi lopsided affair this year too. 14-2, probably not, but at 12
Probably
and
not
4 is
quite
in
that
play.
bad. Yeah. I did see Duke's the non-conference schedule that they have so far. It's absurd. And they're basically scheduling like Gonzaga. Like our conference is going to provide us no big opportunities, so we have to play 8 or 9 heavy hitter games before we get into league play. And it seems John Shire has acknowledged that, sees the writing on the wall with this conference. Although I do think the ACC will be improved, maybe not quite to the extent that it needs to be. Certainly not back to the halcyon days of 2002 or whatever, when it was the dominant conference in the sport.
Right.
Couple little things. Patty Mills was hired as the Hawaii general manager of their men's basketball program, so not St. Mary's, surprisingly, but Iran cannot out of the Randy Bennett tree. There are some connections there.
Bro, he lives
As
there. Lives in like Honolulu. Has since he graduated, got married there. Cool
yeah.
story. Awesome. Patty Mills is awesome. I love Hawaii basketball.
You think he's
Great
going to be
marriage.
grinding 60 hours a week in an office, Matthew?
I don't know.
I
I think
don't.
isn't his is he still in the league?
He's not.
That's crazy. I feel like I'm trying to watch Patty Mills. I'm like, that guy could play till he's 50. It's like one of my all-time favorite eye test players. Just to me, good player. Great player.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Oh, wait, no, he was on the Clippers this year. I stand corrected. So
I'm like, that guy, he should get paychecks till he's 45. I mean, I don't know how I've never seen him be like a liability on the court. I don't care how old he is.
he's 36, so well on his way to that 45-year-old declaration
He's
by
42.
Matthias. And then the U.S. Department of Justice denied Zakai Ziegler's motion for extra eligibility. I don't think this means it is dead completely, but they just quickly dismissed the immediate, like, oh, a rule for like he needs another year of eligibility. I'm glad this is not seemingly not going to turn into a thing, Kai, because it would fundamentally change the sport and bring a lot of people an extra year of eligibility, and I don't need to see that.
Yeah, I don't even know why we need the US DOJ to opine on this. It's absolutely insane to me that we have high courts in the country weighing in on NCAA decisions. I do not understand. Let's figure it out, please.
Yeah, it is. It is silly. All right, that is it for Roots Roundup, guys. Let's get into our discussion of the SEC, a year in review, a look back on the season that was, and we'll discuss kind of where each program should feel, how they should feel about their trajectory going forward. We'll start overall. I mean, just kind of arguably the best, like I said, the best conference we've ever seen in the sport. 14 of the 16 teams made the tournament. It's just completely absurd. There are 8 in the Ken Palm top 22. All 14 tournament teams were in the top 48. And then you had number 69 South Carolina, number 88 LSU. So everybody in the top 100, 15 in the top 70. The plus 22 rating on Ken Palm, which is the net rating needed to go 500 in the league, is the highest ever recorded on the website. It's the first time it's been higher than 20 since the 2004 ACC, which only had 9 teams. So less quality or quantity that needed to be good. They had 7 of the Sweet 16 teams, half the Elite Eight, 2 of the Final Four, and the national champion. Kai, it's absurd. Just a totally ridiculous year for the SEC.
Man, when you lay out all the facts, Jim, best conference in history, I think is warranted. Insane. Not just like top end champion, but depth throughout the entire league was depth. Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see that again.
I just feel bad for the teams at the bottom. Like again, there was no bad teams in this league last year, but it certainly felt like like how it felt like LSU was horrible, right? It felt like South Carolina was horrible. It's just like, well, no, they just playing a really good league, and especially South Carolina lost a ton of close games. But I mean, and this is sort of that you want to play with the big boys and have the advantages of the big boys. You have to really keep up with them because if you find yourself in the bottom end of the totem pole, like you see some of these conference records now where it's like, holy cow, we have top 100, top 80 teams going 2-16, 3-15 in league. That's just, you never saw that before.
Yeah, South Carolina, I think, is the perfect example. A year before, they went
Mizzou, the year
26 and
before.
8, and they were a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. They finished 54th in Ken Palm. They slipped 15 spots, which is essentially nothing in that region,
Yes.
and they fell to 12 and 22 and 16. No shot at the NCAA tournament. Like, just everybody's getting better. There's been great coaching hires, and yes, money has definitely been infused into this conference. In the preseason, we all forecasted 10 teams as making the tournament out of 16, which is a lot, even just in itself. And Matt, you had a very prescient tangent about what was going to happen with really good teams finishing with bad conference records. You even specifically said, what if Oklahoma gets a ton of good non-conference wins, and then goes 7-13 in the league. Unfortunately, there's only 18 games, so they went 6-12. But cited Oklahoma as, all right, what happens
Yeah, that's
if
right.
they do
13-0.
that?
Forgot about that.
And suddenly they do exactly that, and they make the tournament. It was just kind of a perfect storm of the bad teams won just enough games late in the year. Everybody dominated the non-conference, so no one entered with like four losses and had to make up for it with wins in league play. Everybody had like one or two losses in non-conference. So it's set up for this perfect storm of NCAA qualifiers. But it does seem like, and I was happy to see this, the conference record didn't really matter, Kai. And we said it shouldn't. It's not on the team sheet, especially in the year of or the age of giant conferences and unbalanced schedules. It really shouldn't matter, despite what, some people who just kind of glance at resumes in March seem to think.
Totally agree. The NCAA committee got that one right, Jim. Despite other stuff they didn't necessarily get right in the tournament, that part was well done.
Yep. It just shouldn't matter if I think SEC baseball has this all the time, right? Where like
Yeah.
teams that are barely 500 get in, but it's very obvious they're one of the best
And
30
by
or
the
so
way,
teams in the
this
country.
year they had the exact same thing as college basketball, where SEC underperforms in tournament. ACC and some other conferences play much better, and then people get up in arms about the SEC. So the SEC has a good way of making every postseason selection process about them because they probably are the best league. But how much are you going to stack the deck in their favor? I mean, what? So 8, 10, Mississippi State, Arkansas, Georgia, Vandy, OU, Texas, the 8 through 11 seeds, the bottom tier of the NCAA tournament qualifiers from the SEC did go 1-5. I feel like some people were bitching about that, but the league's great. I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to nitpick at that. I think all those teams were worthy. Although maybe Texas at 6-12 in the league, and even OU too. It's like
Yeah.
it
I
doesn't
did
sit
look. I
well with
think the
me.
league, I might be off by a game or two, but the league went, I think, 21-15 against the spread in the NCAA tournament. So even with like the built up massive reputation, they were overperforming. And like Florida went 3-3. It wasn't like they did it with just, the top team dominating. It was still like Arkansas went 3-0. And, some of the mediocre teams did pull their weight there. I think 14 teams belonged in. I have no issue with where they ended up
Yeah,
landing.
I agree.
We had a couple board bets. Matthew, tip of the cap to you. Chaz Lanier over under 12.2 points per game. You said over. You win. You beat me. Kai, you abstained, unfortunately, or didn't give your input there. I think you would have said under since we were both kind of off the Lanier train, but I'm not going to
Oh,
drag you
definitely
because
over,
I.
Jim. Definitely
Yeah, there
over.
you go.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
And both of you took me down in the Texas A&M final Ken Palm ranking over under 24.5. I said over. I thought they were going to not have that high of a ceiling. They finished 18th. So Matthew and Kai, well done. I was surprised to hear that we finalized our Tony Bennett or no Tony Bennett Virginia board bet on this episode. Matthew agreed to a 60.5 threshold even without Tony Bennett, with him
Where did
retiring.
they finish? 106. Yeah.
Yeah, 106. Kai said, and I quote, they could be outside the top 100. And Matt was like, what? And they finished outside the top 100. So
Yeah.
it was a bad
Tough.
year. We did have a review at the end that asked about Virginia, and we're like, you should just want a bad year so you can hire Ryden Odom or something. So
Good.
before the
Oh,
season,
nice
we
take pass.
Had the Odom thing nailed down. So not bad. All right, guys, let's go team by team here. Start. We're going standings order, basically the SEC tournament standings order. So tiebreakers used that way. Auburn starting it off. They finished first. I was the rare one that had them first. Both of you guys had Alabama by a nose, but definitely top two for the Tigers. Kai, you called out Janai Broom as National Player of the Year candidate. Well done. You also called out CBS Sports Matt Norlander for not having them in the top 25 of his rankings, which Kai, you even said, you're like, is that clickbaity?
Yeah.
You didn't like it. You weren't having it.
What was Auburn in ours? Top five? They're your number one, Jim. I mean, to not have them in top 25 was asinine at the time and even sillier looking back. So, yeah, I'll call out Norlander where calling out is due. Absolutely.
Yeah, I picked them to win the title. We had them seventh consensus
Okay.
in our top
Close.
50 countdown.
Did I
Just a
bring us
spot.
down? I think I brought us down.
Yeah, Matthew, you had Auburn. You had Auburn seventh. Kai had them
Okay.
ninth. I had them sixth. So we were all kind of in the
I'm the
same area there.
dumbass.
But yeah, how dare you, Kai? How dare you? We agreed the floor was really high, Matthew, because they're going to dominate the rim with Broom and Cardwell, and the guards were the swing piece. We talked a bunch about JP Pegues. We did not talk much about Tahad Pettiford, and he ended up kind of being the spark plug, the energy guy, the one that could get really hot and make them kind of elite to go with what they had at the bucket and at the rim. So a little bit of a miss there, but I think directionally we knew Auburn was going to be very good. And hey, I picked them to win the title in the preseason, so I was on board, and they got close, made the Final Four, were the best team for the first 3 months of the season before kind of tailing off late. And Matt, you
Uh,
also you were like, they're kind of like the 2002 team, and I was like, what are you talking about? And you meant 2022. It was a
oh,
fun moment
2022.
on the pod. Yeah,
Um, it's funny. This team was one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, the seventh oldest team in terms of experience, and this team felt super old last year. I think contextualizing every team in this league was so effing old, and I think that was a big reason why they were so good. And I think again, that's sort of one of the cheat codes that coaches who did it right during the COVID boom era, which is starting to erode now. But I think just one of many examples we'll get to. Um, but yeah, we'll see how this transitions, Jim. I do like that Pearl. I mean, Pearl definitely has a brand and an identity that I think will be sticky for differentiating himself from guys going forward. We talk about state of the program. His whole let's call God thing, whether some people like it or don't. I think that was a very real connection bond that team had last year with Broom and Cardwell, and it seems like that's a very clear thing that they boast there. And I think that's again, I think good affinity, good unique bonding pivot points is good for your program long term because it can't just be a money race in the SEC. I think you have to have something a little bit more unique to be successful, like long
yeah.
term. And so I
Quick
think last year's kind of
clarification.
proof of that.
Matt was saying Auburn was seventh in the SEC in experience, and they were 24th nationally.
24th
So
nationally.
like
Thank you.
the SEC was hyper experienced, and part of that was because they could pick off all the fifth year transfers, which no longer
Yeah.
exist. So it could be a little harder to maintain that lead. But Kai, your thoughts on Auburn last year and going forward?
I don't have much to say. They were dominant. Remember, start like first half of the year. I know they lost to Duke, but they were considered by I think most people to be the best team with a bullet, national
Yep.
title. Janai Broom runaway national player of the year, and then he got hurt, and Flag became the front runner. Yada yada. Yeah, Bruce Pearl's awesome. He's made 2 Final Fours in the last 6 years. I don't love his roster next season, but I'm sure they'll be very, very good. There's no issues with this program. They will be at the top of the totem pole for quite some time.
I do think Pearl's
Yeah.
an underrated X and O coach. I'm not sure there's people where people perceive him in your own mind, but I think does not get enough credit for particularly in like game to game scouting. He really takes pride in he views every game as a unique. Like they do what they do, they play to their system, but I think he does a lot of really smart, specific adjustments game to game that makes them successful, and it helps me have an old team, right? I think that kind of stuff is translates with experience and smarts and wits, and they
Yep.
certainly have that last year.
Yeah. Pearl is 65. So you'd imagine he's got at least a few more years for sure. And then the presumed uh, succession plan is handing it off to Stephen Pearl, his son, who's on the sideline. We'll see if that is a situation that works out or doesn't. We've seen ups and downs in that department where it's the nepotism hires, you would say. We will find out, but currently in great, great position going forward. Also in great position going forward is Florida, who won the national title. Really good team this year, especially emerged through SEC play. I had them sixth coming into the year, but I did say this team feels like a team that fits Todd Golden's vision of basketball: get up and down, deep stable of bigs, bludgeon the glass, very high in a Condon breakout. So ranked them higher in sixth in the SEC. Jim, you idiot. Listen to yourself. The team was awesome, though. Just incredible shot making from Walter Clayton. Elijah Martin was a perfect ad. Kai, you nailed that. Just being super high on Martin and how he fit into the team, gave them some perimeter defense. Matt talked about them pressuring more. That helped the defense. But Kai, you had him ninth. What
Yeah, I
happened?
don't know. I don't know. I listened back to the pod and I was shocked this morning to hear that I had him ninth. Shoot, because it was clear that this team was elite. Forgot which day it was during the season. I'm sure it was like December. Turned them on and it was like, oh my god, like this team could win the actual title. Took the future right then and there. But apparently, I didn't love them in the preseason. I didn't love the Chinyelu and Alexis ads. Alexis turned out to be correct. Chinyelu did his job. He played his role perfectly. He was a ferocious rebounder. He 8 minutes up in the front court, especially when Hand Lockton was out. He was huge. And of course, I love Elijah Martin. But man, this team just fit together so perfectly. It's one of those teams that just played off each other, and it felt like that UConn style we've seen the last couple of years, Matthew, in terms of just guys like puzzle pieces perfectly meshing. So yeah, fantastic, best team last year, maybe outside of Houston, and Golden's got it going for the future too.
Yeah. One of those coaches tapping into the, I think, advantage of size and pace and size, right? Two bigs dominate the rim, and they had depth. That's we probably undersold the depth of their front line and how many bodies they
Well,
had. And not
we
only,
didn't know Handlogton would come back from his
and that
leg
was a
shattering in
bonus
half.
exactly. So, and they all were just way better than we thought they were be. But you look at that as like an insurance policy with all those bigs, but they actually all played big minutes, and that was a weapon. I just think the depth, and when you play with pace and at the tempo they want to go at, you got to have you got to be able to rotate bodies in and out, play different matchups. Positional size, I know it's a big thing that Golden harps on. I think he really leaned into that last year too. You saw that successfully, but I mean, this team doesn't come together without Walter Clayton going super nuclear, right? I mean, that's sort of the you build these teams with a lot of these uncertainties and positive to low end outcomes, and you gotta have some good fortune. They certainly did with the way Clayton just went to a superhero level. Martin coming back off that quasi injury year before, but still smart staff. We've been telling people about this for years, and I think we were sort of looking stubborn before last year, perhaps, but I think we got the last laugh with what happened last season. So nice job, TG,
I,
Sapphire, and fellas.
it feels like the Golden just got the biggest or that massive extension. The real risk for them would be is Todd Golden a pro candidate eventually? Is he going to be the kind of like competitive spirit guy that sees like
Yeah,
another challenge? That would be the one concern if he gets too good and takes the Billy Donovan step of going pro. But I feel like we're still a few years from that. He's
and
very
you're already
young
seeing
and
the Baylor,
yeah,
like the Scott Drew Baylor assistant, the Vultures after the title, right? And everyone they elevate those names, and now Golden is down. I think what two is those two top
yeah.
assistants that took head coaching jobs. Hey, our guy Sapphire gets promoted, so this is sort of the success begets success, but success also begets challenges. That's not a very
Yep.
profound saying, but they're starting to deal with that now pretty quickly.
Yep. Next up, number three in the regular season standings was Alabama, who I had two. These two guys had one. They're coming off a Final Four. A lot of talent on the roster, just clearly loaded. And they had a good year. And I think the depth that they assembled, in preseason, I said if it was 13 on 13, they'd be number one. It turned out to matter quite a bit, losing Millette for the year, losing Wrightsell to an Achilles tear. Darian Reed was never quite what you wanted him to be because he was banged up most of the season. And yet the team was still fantastic, Kai. Top eight team in the country, incredible offense, lit up BYU in the NCAA tournament, one of the best shooting performances you'll ever see from a team. I would say it was still a successful year, but I'm sure they aspired for a little more coming off that Final Four and getting Sears and Nelson back.
Yeah, absolutely success. It's so hard to be the fastest team in the country and be a top six team. It's almost impossible, I think, in college basketball. But Alabama has done that because of all the talent that Oates brings in and because of Oates's coaching ability himself. So he has really built an identity at Alabama that will continue on as long as he's there. And he's made Alabama a basketball school, which seemed impossible, I think, a decade ago or ever when Avery Johnson was coaching this team. But yeah, great season. I'm fine having them number one in the preseason, Matthew. That's fine. That was defensible, and I'm okay with it. They're going to be great going forward too. Good program.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about Alabama as like was last year not a letdown, but it does feel like we're glossing over the year they had, and they were a two seed and lost to the eventual, well, I don't want to say national title winner because Duke choked it away against Houston, but um, I mean I think what Oates has done is just crazy. Right? I think it's a perfect microcosm of the SEC, rising tide lifting all boats, and system works, identity works. The amount that they lean into like the pro NBA development, the way that they teach individual player read and react type style stuff that translate at the next level. I think with the money, the momentum they have, but also the way they can sell that specific part of their player development stuff. You heard Ryan Pannone talk about that in our Discord. Now the head coach at Arkansas State, all the coaches that Oates trees have now been elevated to head coaches, assistants elsewhere. Like you just see a lot of this, the tentacles of the Alabama thing spreading, and I think it's going to only help them going forward. They will win a title in the Oates era. If he's there for 10 more years, I think a title is coming. Just a matter of time when they break through.
Yeah, I don't hate that take. There's a lot of good coaches out there, but I mean, they are getting bites at the apple. It's like
Right.
he's been
That's all
number
you can do.
6, number 14, number 4, number 9 in Ken Palm for the last 5 years. You keep being that good, and unless you're sorry, Gonzaga fans, Mark Few, or I guess even Calvin Sampson, you'll break through. So just keep giving yourself chances. Not everybody's UConn that wins every time they're a top 5 team. So Alabama, keep trucking along. You're in good shape. Next up, number 4, Tennessee. This one's a little less interesting to talk about simply because they are such a high floor team. They were exactly what we expected, a top 3 defense nationally with Ziegler, Meshack, and Okpara leading the way. The ceiling got lifted a little bit with Lanier being even better. I think Matt was the optimist on Lanier. I would argue he was even better than what Matt thought. He was
Way better.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Just an incredible lights out shooter. And I was worried he didn't give anything off the bounce. He didn't need to. He just got all kinds of shots in within the offense. They slowed back down. Tennessee played fast with Connect in 2024. They slowed a little more down last year, got in the half court because they lacked the same kind of offensive firepower, but it didn't matter. Lanier was the guy for them. Gainey was better than I expected. Shout out to Gainey. If they had gotten anything from Dubar, they might have been national title contender, but they were still really, really good. And Kaya, just one offensive drought against Houston, too many. The best defense in the country was their undoing.
Yeah, Lanier really blew me away this season. Basically, didn't skip a beat from coming over from North Florida, which going to Tennessee it was shocking. Coming into last year, he was an honorable mention All American and deserved every bit of it. He was fantastic. Yeah, this Tennessee team it's kind of what we get every year from Rick Barnes. That's why Jim said it's boring. It's like, yeah, we know they're going to be really good, high floor, top 5 defensively. Yeah, I really don't have much to add. I mean, Tennessee is what Tennessee is every single season under Barnes. I'm glad they had a little more success in the tournament this season, making an Elite Eight, because I hate the Rick Barnes argument about the tournament, and I want that monkey off his back because he really does have incredible teams every single year, past the talent as well. I think he overperforms talent quite a bit. Um, Again, another program that's ridiculous. Number 5 in KenPom, but number 4 in the SEC. Last year's conference was unfair.
Yeah, 4
Yeah.
straight years in the top 10 of KenPom.
Yeah.
Last 2 years,
Right.
5th in KenPom, 2 seed, Elite Eight, lose to the national runner-up. Like the exact same bottom right bracket on the tournament on your bracket paper too. It was weird how that was like a clone, but yeah, they're in pretty good shape too. Although Barnes is aging.
Yeah. And Zakai Ziegler leaves. I think it's worth noting that I know he wasn't the only reason they were as good as they were the last 3 to 4 years. But I do think a program pillar and all the stuff that he did, we'll see if maybe there's a slight drop off. But I like a lot like Nate Oates. The only question if you're asking yourself as a Tennessee fan is like, is there something systemically in our coach's style and perhaps deficiency that makes us vulnerable to losing in the tournament? I would say no. But this has been kind of the Barnes narrative, right? Like, do they not have? Can he not adapt enough in game? Is their offense a little bit too antiquated? Where Oates, it's more like, oh, they shoot too many threes. They don't have another way to pivot to in a game against a certain style, or where the threes aren't falling. So I think Tennessee, Alabama are two interesting back-to-back teams to talk about because like they're both in insanely awesome shape. So like if you're gonna find one narrative, it's like, is their style attached to their coaching a potential annoyance or hindrance in the tournament, being able to adapt to certain styles and adjust to certain game flows? I don't know. I think that's just dumb tournament variance. But if you're a fan of both these fan bases, I think that's kind of what your head's at right now.
Yeah, and like I said, I think you have to figure out what the succession plan is after Barnes. It's not quite as obvious as some of
Yeah.
the other schools, and he's had a lot of assistant drain on his staff. Guys get hired elsewhere. Do you go after one of those guys, or is it like a full brand new search whenever that
Or Kim
happens?
English parachute hire. How about that?
I don't wish
How
that
about
on
Parachute.
that?
Vols fans.
Barnes endorsed him in the AD meeting. Here comes Kimmy.
Parachute to a better program, eh?
An upward
Yeah.
parachute.
Yeah, the upward parachute. Next, Texas A&M. As I mentioned in the board bet section, I was wrong on them. I thought their narrow range of outcomes, and they didn't blow that away by finishing 18th compared to 25th. But with as good as this conference was, finishing 5th and finishing 18th nationally is pretty darn good. Matt's he said the upside starts with Obaseki. Obaseki was pretty bad, but really, Kai, what happened was they defended, and you were kind of all over how big and physical they were. Matt talked about how they're an off the bus champion team that gets off the bus and looks terrifying when you see them. they were so physical, and figuring that out is really what upped their upside compared to the previous season. So defense was actually what got it done for the Aggies.
Yeah, defense and being just freaking bullies. Like number one offensive rebound rate in the country, attack the rim, get to the free throw line constantly. Their biggest flaw was getting Zurich Phelps, and that was our critique in the preseason too. Zurich
Yuck.
Phelps, I mean, malpractice by Buzz Williams, in my opinion. The guy led the conference in shot percentage taken of his team's shots and had a sub 90 O rating against tier A and B competition. Like he was horrible. 26 games against the most elite competition in the country, and he shot 37% from two and 26% from three, and had over a 30% usage. That's insane. I understand A&M couldn't really score elsewise, but literally anything would have been better than handing Zurich Phelps the ball every possession.
Yeah, the idea was, I guess, he misses softly enough for them to get all
Maybe.
their
Great
offensive
misser.
rebounds.
Great misser.
Like,
The
yeah,
best misser in the country,
outstanding
potentially.
miss. Yeah,
You could argue he was.
yeah. But yeah, Matt, we you can talk a little A&M last year too, but then also frame it on Bucky taking over.
Yeah, that's what I'm excited about. I think it's funny. You're an A&M fan. You had one of the most stubborn system coaches in college basketball and Buzz, and now you're getting Buckyball. And I think the question is, how stubborn is he going to be with his system? Jim, you're sort of implying that there needs to be some adaptation. You're probably correct, and I think A&M fans were certainly annoyed last year with the lack of adaptation. I mean, they just went even more into the old, we can't shoot. We're going to turn you over. We're getting to the rim. We got pressure. It's the ultimate get off the bus athlete type team. And that's why it's, they talk about those games against Houston were like the all time just men versus men battles. I'm excited for a change, honestly. I think A&M fans kind of are too. As good as Buzz was, as consistently underappreciated as Buzz is everywhere he goes, except for maybe Marquette, I do think it was both parties are the grass is greener on their current side of the fence for both Buzz
Yeah.
and A&M.
Buzz does this 5 or 6 years everywhere and moves on. And yeah, the upside and the fun factor with Bucky is definitely higher compared to the Buzz. Win the extras, out physical, but have no ability to shoot. I mean, they never finished higher than 241st nationally in 3-point percentage in 6 years under Buzz, most of the time in the bottom 25 or so. So I'm sure Aggies fans are maybe excited to see a different brand of ball come to College Station. We'll see how that works out, though. Number 6, Kentucky. Guys, we talked about how important Amari Williams would be as kind of the fulcrum offensively and the big defender inside, and he ended up being really, really good coming over from Drexel. They had a bunch of shooting. That was, one of the things I highlighted. I thought the offense would be really fun under Pope. They shot the lights out. Matt liked their defensive upside, which I sort of see in hindsight with Butler, with Owe, with Amari Williams, but they struggled to keep guys in front, even with the Kirk Kriisa injury. But we all had them fourth, fifth, sixth, Kai. That's about where they ended up. I think nationally we were pretty spot on to where they landed inside the top 20, a 4 seed. Really good first year for Pope. And I mean, their roster's so expensive next year. I think they're going to continue to have plenty of talent.
And I think last year their ceiling was among best in the country. They were top 10 at one point in Kim Pom. When they were on, maybe the most fun team to watch in college basketball last year, it was just a barrage of shooting. Otega Owe become their best player. That kind of came out of left field for me. He was excellent. And Amari Williams, I know we talked him up a little bit. He was even better than I expected coming from Drexel. He brought his lunch pail. He actually put forth the effort, and he was great on both ends of the floor. So, yeah, Mark Pope put together a perfect roster. Not necessarily got stars last season, but a bunch of guys that fit, a bunch of doubles and triples, and it worked. And I think Mark Pope is a perfect coach for Kentucky right now, and once again, going to be great going forward.
Yeah, I'll amend it. I said 3 seed, or I said 4 seed. They were a 3 seed, and they had injuries. If Butler, Jackson Robinson, Kirk Kriisa don't get hurt, who knows? Matthew, you're muted if you want to say something. Nope, still muted, Matthew. There you go.
There we go. I think, Butler doesn't get hurt. Intrigued where this team winds up long-term postseason. I think that was a key hindrance along with Jackson Robinson as well. And you're at the defense. I think there's a question with this program going forward. It's maybe Mark Pope as a defensive coach. I mean, I don't think he has like any major deficiencies there, but that's sort of been with how he plays and what he recruits to in the style. I mean, like skill is first and foremost, shooting, spacing, So he's going to have to find some give take on that end, I think, long term. That's their only hold. But like with the money they have, the depth that he can put together, like there's just every year I feel like their floor will be so high if they can have 10 high major starters. Like at some point, it's going to work. You're going to find five guys, two, three might get injured, but just with that depth that you can accumulate, it's like one of the highest floor programs. I guess all these programs are high floor programs, but just with that's such a key thing for Pope is that depth.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out if Jane Quaintance is going to be healthy to be their starting center next year. Well, if he's not to start the year, you've got a 5-star recruit. You've got one of the best European bigs coming over, and you've got Brandon Garrison, who was your backup 5 last year. So you have plenty of options. And that's in addition to the 2 million or whatever more you probably spent on Quaintance to get him in the fold. Kentucky's going to be fine with their resources. The rare SEC school that very clearly prioritizes basketball over football, much to Mark Stoops' chagrin. But yeah, Kentucky's in great shape and they've got a great coach. So no worries about them going forward. Number 7, Kai, the Mizzou Tigers.
Wow.
Hey, our alma mater bounded up the standings. I had them 11th in the preseason. We were all like on board with the turnaround. I think a little bit cautious to fully lean into it, but Matt said he'll think this will be Gates's best defensive team. He was technically correct. It still wasn't a great defensive team, but it was Gates's best defense. Kai says a much, much better roster than last season. Correct. I said they fixed their depth and positional size issues. It generally was a very good year, Kai. Left with a sour note at the end with the loss to Drake and getting out executed by Ben McCollum, but there were some high highs during that season when the offense got hot with Gates and Grill, or with Bates and Grill firing from deep.
Yeah, it was the best season since our senior year, Jim, 2012. It brought back memories of that where Mizzou was actually really good at basketball, and you can point to the turning point in their season was after the February 1st game against Mississippi State. We blew them out, 17-4, 6-2 in the SEC, and now people are talking about Mizzou as a Final Four contender and being a high ceiling national title contender. Why not? This team's fun, deep, and they go 5-8 down the stretch. And Matthew Gates couldn't figure out rotations even late in the year. He just played too many guys, played weird lineups, and still it was one of the better teams we've seen in the program in the last couple decades because they were old, because they were deep, and because they just got to the free throw line like insane levels.
Yep.
I had a great season, Matt, despite losing in the first round.
So it was a great year. It was a fun year. Like the Drake thing. Listen, it was like the worst matchup. I mean, it just was. I mean, did Gates get out coached badly? Yeah, I think he did. But I just think that was also just a really poor luck of the draw with who you guys went up against. Like any other 11 seed, I think Mizzou could be a Sweet 16 team, and we're totally looking at this season through a different lens. And I think talking about Gates in a much more, I don't know. I think there's still some stink from the one in, I guess the winless thing 2 years ago, but I don't know. I mean, what's your guys' take on the program? I should be asking you. I still feel very confident, and this is a really high bar. This league, it's just tough to feel great about any program in this league unless you're Kentucky or Bama or Tennessee, or because there's just so many effing good ones with crazy resources and awesome coaches. But I still feel good about Mizzou and Gatesy.
I think the defensive ceiling is low with the staff, and they're not going to have. I don't know. I just don't know if that they'll always have the talent to compete the way they did and the high ceiling that they had. So Kai, I'm concerned going forward, but maybe I'm just too pessimistic after a loss.
It's tough because the teams with the most resource in this league are also the teams with like the best coaches. So you can't like out coach your way to make up talent gap when you're going against Nate Oates and Todd Golden, right?
And Mark Pope.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Mark Pope, right? Like, what are you going to do?
Yep. All right, number 8, Ole Miss. This was probably my biggest whiff of the preseason pod, talking down about their defense. I don't know how they're going to guard, bringing back the guys they brought back, and the players that they brought in. I didn't think they'd be able to mount to defense, but they finished top 25 in Ken Pom on defense in a loaded league. So pretty good pivot from Mr. Beard, bringing in Chris Adams as well, or Mark Adams, not Chris Adams. Mark Adams, his old cohort on the sideline. They figured it out. Malik Dia was really good. The offense was fantastic. Padua was even better than probably anybody expected coming over from Virginia Tech. Kai, it was a good year. I mean, 8th doesn't look that good in the SEC, but it was an epic conference, and they made the Sweet 16, and Chris Beard clearly still has it on the sideline.
Yeah, ever since they killed Illinois in that preseason game, I think it was like, whoa, Ole Miss, they might be for real. We've thought Chris Beard is a great coach going back for many, many years, and he proved it, and he was balanced. Top 25 in both ends is truly impressive. And again, kind of like Mizzou, he had a really old team. Got just a bunch of fifth year guys, bunch of seniors, and it worked. That's a pretty good blueprint in today's game. I just can't believe this team was eighth in the SEC. Jim, you mentioned it. It's like this team is way better than that, in my opinion, to finish eighth in a conference. But that's just how good the SEC was last season. Once again, the coaching in this league is insane. Chris Beard at Ole Miss, for as long as he's there, this will be a relevant program. That's kind of rinse and repeat for all these teams.
Yep. And speaking of a team with a longtime or legend coach and plenty of resources, Arkansas coming in ninth. We all had fourth and fifth. That was kind of where we evaluated the Razorbacks to be. Really good front line, some talent coming over following Calipari from Kentucky, three top 25 recruits, Boogie Fland being the favorite of us. I think Kai correctly hyped Adu Thero to start the season. He was arguably their best player, probably was, losing him down the stretch hurt, but they did make the Sweet 16, had a pretty good year to end it. All things considered, Matthew, we'll get one last take in you. I know you might have to dip out early on the pod here, but Arkansas, good year going forward, still feel good. I mean, they've got all kinds of money, so it's hard not to be encouraged.
Yeah, I just think the resource support there is it can only be so bad. I still don't know what to think about Cal. Part of me thinks that he kind of ironically has the Musselman type of vibe where he's very good at playing mismatches and finding talent, one-on-one type stuff, even though we've sort of, he got made fun of a ton last season. I think last year was actually a bad year for Cal as a coach in terms of his reputation. He said some really stupid things. And I wonder if that has a lasting stain on his perception and maybe tightens the leash, because that's a pretty tight leash there in Fayetteville, Kai, with the resources they have. But then you make that run in the postseason, maybe that eradicates all of that. I don't know. I guess I find myself more confused about my take on Cal, but I think overall the range of program is going to be high to very high when you have as much money as they do in today's era. So
yeah, they're too talented not to lose. But last year was a horrible year for Arkansas. The tournament run spackled over what was an utter disaster. Like, this team started 0-5 in the SEC. Cal looked completely inept as a head coach to start the season when he wasn't playing Nelly Davis in his optimal role, which is the best player on the freaking team.
He was hurt, Kai.
I guess, but I thought Calipari did a horrible job last year considering all his talent. I mean, many people thought this team was a top 15 team. They were on paper, and they just horrible in conference play. Lucky run, and they look good actually in the tournament. So maybe you point to that and say, yeah, this is the team we should have seen all season, but they did not get it done during the year. And I think any Arkansas fan would tell you last year was a disappointment.
Yeah, I think I would agree, but they've got a good amount back next year. More talent coming in. Darius Acuff, the big time point guard that they're excited about. So we'll see if Calipari can turn things around and get back into the ranks of the nationally elite, especially with the resources as mentioned. Finishing 10th last year's Mississippi State. Kai and I both had them 7th in the preseason, but we thought there was a wider range of outcomes. Matthew citing the Jekyll and Hyde guys that they had on the roster, with Kanye Clary and Riley Kugel and RJ Melendez. Kind of an odd group of players for Chris Jan's team, but while different than the normal Mississippi State outcome under Jan's, Matthew, or at least different structure, they kind of finished basically the same. Like, middle of the pack, didn't win a game in the NCAA tournament. Is that the Chris Jan standard going forward? Maybe. And this is a team that's more limited in resources than the others in the conference.
yeah, they had some bad luck shooting wise. I know in the SEC they were like 15th in both offensive and defensive 3-point percentage. I wonder if slightly tweak that. Maybe we're talking about this team a little differently, but it's just weird that Jans is kind of like Beard in a way, evolving, modernizing himself, becoming more open to recruiting guys with skill and talent while trying not to sacrifice more of that defensive mentality that he's always kind of built his reputation on. I think he's openly talked about this. He's like, I don't care if we're a defensive first team. I just want to win. So I like that he has that like not so, bullheaded approach. But I wonder if deep down he's struggling, because I know last year is just not the types of teams that he's like most comfortable coaching. I know he had some frustrations with their inconsistency in defense, especially in in conference play. But again, I mean, it was a brutal conference. So, I think these teams that had lulls last season were just quote unquote tough parts of the schedule where it's like it's the SEC. I mean, you're going to lose a couple games in a row.
Yeah, I think his roster ended up being a little too cobbled together. Ultimate like get stuff done team. Like we don't make mistakes. They lost to Butler, but aside from that, they didn't lose to anybody that they should have lost to. However, the flip side of that was they beat four teams all season in the top 50 of KenPom, and two of those with the same team, Ole Miss. There wasn't a lot of ceiling to this team. I think that's part of the a problem with the roster. Now it's Mississippi State. This isn't Kentucky. You're not getting the same level of player coming to Starkville. So in that lens, I think Jans did a great job. And heck, for this program to make three straight NCAA tournaments, I'd say it's on a pretty good track right now.
Do we just concede that they're going to win 21 games, go 8-10 in the league, and lose an 8-9 game every single year?
That's what he's done, right?
What they've done. Yeah, consistency from Mr. Jans. And in Stark Vegas, that's pretty valuable. He's made three straight tournaments, and they had made one in the prior 12 years. So pretty good stuff. I think you
They
take
got
that.
money
And
too. Where's their money coming from? Who's like they're like
I don't
Tyson
think they have a
Chicken or
ton of money, do
FedEx?
they? I would say they're on the low end of SEC budgets.
Right. But still, they have money. I mean, talking to people behind the scenes, I think they're still, they're outspending most Big 12, I mean, Big 12, even some Big 10
Yeah,
programs too. So,
outspending the ACC. Number 11, Georgia. Team that it was hard to figure out in the preseason where you could see some talent. We thought maybe they were going to be one of or too young in the SEC and a very experienced league, but I think Tyron Lawrence and Dakota Lefew really helped them in the backcourt, give them some experience. And Asa Newell was probably even better than anyone expected with his how efficient he was in the offensive end to go with his shot blocking. Team was pretty darn good. They were not actually quite bottom five in the SEC as Kai predicted. I had them 13th, so I had them down there too. But man, Matt called out that he liked the upside, he liked the talent. This is the year that Mike White breaks his KenPom trend, which was finishing below his preseason rank, and that he did. So
Yep.
good job by Georgia to make the tournament. Pretty meek, feeble effort in the tournament, getting mega blasted by another Bulldogs, Gonzaga. But overall, a success, Kai, for what Georgia typically hopes to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say all their losses, or at least almost all of them, were Q1. So again, a team that took care of business and beating Florida, beating Kentucky, beating St. John's, showed you the upside. Incredibly talented team. Our worry was youth, and they were extremely young, and maybe that's what held them back slightly. But kudos to Mike White, man, for bringing in those players to Georgia and actually succeeding with them, unlike what Georgia teams have done in the past. Asa Newell was fantastic. That guy was legit. Wish he was in college another year, but he should definitely be going pro. And losing Demery to UConn, Matt, oh, perfect gift for UConn. Congratulations, you're going to be a title contender once again.
yeah, pretty quiet, like 4 game winning streak. I remember they closed out the regular season to kind of solidify their inclusion. I think that's when they got Lawrence back, who fittingly was one of their only older players. And that's what they badly needed, some veteran presence, I think, with such a young team. But your point stands, like how successful they were with a relatively younger team. I know they're talented, but still, I think clearly age outweighs talent. At least it has the last 3 years. Although age probably equates to more talent, I suppose. I love where this program's at. You're Georgia, right? It's a football institution. That's pretty clear. If you can be in the middle of the pack in the SEC, that's great. So I don't know how long Mike White is going to stay there. If he's looking to move, if they want to lock him up for a long-term deal, I don't know what the vibes are in that relationship. But I feel like keep doing this, Georgia. Like I don't know what else you'd want to expect. Honestly, maybe you get lucky in the tournament, make breakthrough for a second weekend. But I like where you're at. I mean, and going to next year. I mean, like it. There's some pieces there for sure.
Yeah, I think I like that they did the too big dominate the rim kind of thing last year and try to lean into that identity. If they're going to play Cannon Catchings at the four next year, I think that is not is leaning away from what made them successful this season. But generally, yes, Mike White figured things out a little bit. They're not going to get a five-star recruit every year from an all-time Montverde team like they did with Newell, but at least there was progress and exceeding expectations, even with a pretty young team in a very veteran league. So I will tip my cap to Mr. White and say, yeah, if they can be in the bubble conversation annually, that's a win for a program that is typically not. So and Tom Crean never made a tournament there. Mike White did in his third season. So well done, Mr. White.
Wow.
Number 12, Vanderbilt. A wide range of outcomes, said Kai. I think that was correct right off the bat. I talked about how they had a bunch of older players, grad transfers, per minute monsters. Was curious how it would all come together, and it came together pretty well. They immediately got up into the top 50 or so of Ken Pom, despite starting way, way worse than that. Byington won quickly because he got so many veteran players. Matt, I like you called them the Louisville of the SEC. Turn over the entire roster, speed things up, be a little bit more fun. Massive improvement at coach. And Jason Edwards was the star, Matthew. I think we all generally were sort of onto the upside of Vanderbilt, but didn't commit to it maybe quite as hard as you did.
Yeah, one of the I think a lot of first year coaches it's sort of a trial and error thing, but I think the really good ones broke through quickly and they did it with depth and they got a bunch of guys early and they just said, let's get a bunch of puzzle pieces and we can sort out the puzzle as the year goes on. I think that's what Byington did. I think they got a lot of early signings in the cycle. They had a pretty intact roster. Again, this is why depth I think is really important to a lot of these coaches is it gives you optionality. You're not too leveraged on one or two guys. You can kind of spread around your different levers that you can pull. And I think his style, his system, it's not like over the top chaotic or havocy, but it is one that's different. And I think it allows them to kind of tilt the possession battle in their favor, especially in some of these super talented teams, bigger teams, certainly that they see in the SEC. So I'm curious how it holds up going forward when you see more of these teams going bigger and bigger. Florida, we talked about Tennessee, we talked about Auburn, we talked about obviously, but I like that there's sort of a zig against the zag or zag against the zig with Byington. I think next year looks the same. I think that'll be his thing going forward. And they got money now, which is nice.
Yeah, he's an awesome coach. Took him 1 year to get to the tournament. Jerry Stackhouse 0 for 5. It's amazing once you get a good coach how easy winning becomes. It's not that hard. It's not a hard concept, guys. He built a perfect roster for what he had at Vanderbilt, and Tyler Nickel and McLaughlin, Jim, turning into like very, very, very good SEC players. That's great talent evaluation and development. That's Byington, and he did a great job. And Vanderbilt is lucky to have him holding the reins right now.
Yeah, I think he's going to have to continue to do that and hit on some sort of under the radar guys in the portal that maybe don't jump at you with counting stats and they're not the highly ranked transfers, but figuring out guys that were productive in their roles. I think he's going to continue to do that too. I like the Aki Okirike second straight offseason. He grabbed a guy from Cornell to go with Chris Mignon last year. I think that's going to be a very, very underrated grab. Tyler Harris, big time shooter coming from Washington as a nice role player off the bench. Duke Miles, Frankie Collins. Duke Miles, the well-traveled, multiple committed guy this offseason, but we know he can play in the SEC. That helps. And Frankie Collins, a kind of a reclamation project at point guard. I think Byington's going to continue to do that, hit the talent eval, where I don't think they're real high up in the budgets in the conference, but they've got a guy that knows how to win on the margins and in the style that Matt mentioned, I think is smart too. We should mention to the listener, we did lose Matthew to his parents or his parents-in-law visiting. So we're just going to clean up the last four teams here without him and we will wrap it up. So sorry to anybody that loves Matt's takes. You don't get him on Texas, Oklahoma,
Too bad.
LSU or South Carolina. Yes. But Kai, we've got Texas next. Weird discussion in the preseason. We were kind of razzing Rodney Terry, and you talked about how some people have been like, wait, are those guys too harsh on Rodney Terry? Are they? Well, he finished barely in the top 50 with the roster he had last year, and Kai, I think, deservedly got fired. It was time to go in a different direction from the interim move that they made. Matt said the roster was too good to fail, too good to go sour. And I would say last year went sour with them making a play-in game with that talent.
Absolutely. Yeah, top 20 even in KenPom to start the year. And we waxed poetically about the roster. But Jim, listening to the podcast this morning, I was like, yeah, Julian Larry and Jason Kent, two incredible gets from great Indiana State team. And he barely plays them. And he plays Arthur Kaluma a ton, who did not have a bad year. But I think you could have played the glue guy like Kent, the guy like Larry over some
Weaver,
of those.
Play him
and
more.
Kendall Weaver over some. I know some of them got hurt, so that's fair. But it just didn't fit in terms of Byington getting guys that fit together and orchestrating a perfect roster and coaching him. It was the anti with Terry. And yeah, a lot of people saw it for a couple years, even when he took over for Beard, that this experiment probably wouldn't work out too well.
Yeah, it's so many guys on the roster that wanted the ball. And if you're playing Johnson, Kaluma, Pope, and Mark together, like there's just not enough shots to go around.
Yeah.
There's not enough guys doing the little things. That's why they're on off. Their net rating when Weaver played was way better than normal. Really, anytime they played the good defenders, anytime you had Kaluma on
Yeah.
the floor, Larry on the floor, Kent and Weaver on the floor, and Shedrick, of course, because they had no backup big man. But playing the defenders to complement all the shot making they had, like Trey Johnson had a really good
That's
year on
awesome.
30% usage. It's going to
Awesome.
be a lottery pick, and they barely slipped into the tournament with the talent they had.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just it didn't work, and we'll see what Sean Miller can do down in Austin. I think it will be better for Longhorn fans. The other recent migrator from the Big 12, Oklahoma, had the typical Porter Moser year, dominate the non-conference. In fact, they were undefeated, looked really good. They won the battle for Atlantis, and then it got a little dicey in league play. It was kind of funny. Thinking about the ups and downs of their season, they actually never got higher than 34th on KenPom and never lower than 50th. They played the entire season in that range, even with the winning they did early and the losing they did in the SEC. It was kind of just like late game luck that dictated that they were the same team pretty much the entire year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad he finally got over the hump, Porter Moser, and got into the tournament after such a good non-con, because we've seen that a couple years now at OU. But Jim, if you would have stacked, if you lined up Oklahoma's roster with Texas' roster last year, and we did it, and you'd say the team on the right, Oklahoma, is going to finish 7 spots higher in KenPom than the team on the left, you'd be crazy, right? People would look at you like you're absolutely insane. But Porter Moser is a fantastic coach. He outperforms expectations. And Jeremiah Fears really was
Yeah.
excellent as a reclass freshman, which we do not see very often.
Yeah, that's the I was going to give an apology directly to Mr. Fears because was really skeptical of him on the preseason pod. Is he going to upset like a decent rotation? No, he was the star, and he had, the freshman wall mid-season where he dipped a little bit, but he was awesome to start, and he was incredible down the stretch. So Jeremiah deserves his pro contract that he's got coming, likely a lottery pick in the draft in a couple of weeks here. He was great, and I kind of like what Oklahoma's going to have going forward, where maybe they're not the wealthiest basketball budget, but Moser, as you talked about in the preseason pod, he does more with less. He can elevate talent, and I think they're going to continue to be competitive. Maybe that's not exactly what some Sooner fans want. They want like the higher upside, but for now, I think remaining competitive in this loaded SEC is a good thing, and Moser's going to keep you there. LSU next, finished 15th, though they were the last ranked KenPom team at 88th. We were all pretty much on board, Kai. You said this team isn't even that bad, but someone has to finish last. I said they're reasonably talented roster, and they would not be dead last in a lot of other conferences. I default put them 16th. It just was kind of a symptom of the rest of the league being great, and then you lose Jalen Reed, a guy you liked. He has the ACL tear, and Tyrell Ward, a guy I liked, sits out the entire season. And that's the margins that drop you from competitive in this league to the cellar.
Yeah, but in the roster, every single guy was kind of just a little less than a typical SEC player at that position, at that level, at that starting spot. And when you cobble together, it turned into, yeah, LSU's just not quite as good as these other teams in their league. And now you look at Mac McMahon from a 30,000-foot view 3 years into his LSU tenure, and you see 151, 95, and 88 in KenPom. He had 3 Murray State teams finish better than those rankings at LSU. And you got to wonder if the writing's on the wall pretty soon. I agree next year doesn't look that bad from a roster perspective, but I'd almost guarantee it's going to end in a pretty similar spot, which is definitely bottom half of the SEC and maybe even like bottom 4 again.
Yeah, and we kind of gave him a break on the preseason podcast. He came in, there were sanctions at the end of the Will Wade scenario,
Yeah.
at the end of the Will Wade tenure that he had to kind of get past. But at some point, the patience is going to run out with the administration. They'll want to start to winning. Look around, see every other SEC program making the tournament
Every single
in the last 2 years. Yeah, South Carolina made it a year ago, and if he's not going to get there, they're going to have to look somewhere else. And see what Will Wade did and try to capture that lightning in a bottle again. And it doesn't seem like McMahon's been able to do that. And I'd be concerned if I were a Bayou Bengal fan going forward. Last but not least, South Carolina, the other Columbia, Kai. We can say that as Mizzou guys, and there's no Gamecock rebuttal on the pod right now. We knew Colin Murray Boyles was a stud, but Kai, you said they're not going to go winless, but this team really struggled. They were competitive. Like I said, they were only 15 spots away from their NCAA tournament six seed team in Ken Pom. They didn't fall that far from a national lens, but man, they just didn't have enough depth, enough SEC caliber players to back up the incredible Murray Boyles.
Yeah, that was a concern. If you look at including the SEC tournament, they're 2-17 against SEC competition. Five of those games they lost by 4 points or less, and another game they lost in overtime. So it's not like they were bad, like you said. They were in games. They just kind of had a Mizzou syndrome of a couple years ago where they could not finish and could not get over the hump and actually put tallies in the win column. Paris has a tough job, I think, at South Carolina. I don't think it's an easy place to win at, uh, especially given how good the conference is now. He had a fantastic year 2 years ago by getting this team to the tournament. I just think it's going to be a struggle every year going forward with the resources compared to other schools. Again, last year wasn't that bad, but it's still going to be a bottom tier team, Jim, in the SEC.
Yeah, Matt talks style a lot, and he talks about how Byington's style is different. Well, Paris' style is different. He's one of the most half-court focused coaches in the conference, and I think that can help, and it certainly helped in 2024. But last year, I think was more an issue of talent. Like their second best player, arguably, was Jamari Thomas,
Yep.
and that's a MEAC up transfer. And lose Miles Studi for the season. He's a useful piece. Getting him back next year will help some, but I think they're going to kind of be in the same like mostly a bottom half team every year in the league, but can crack the NCAA tournament when things come together, and that needs to be the hope. And that's probably should be okay with South Carolina fans. I don't
Yeah.
want to put that on them and tell them that's what you should accept, but I think Paris is a pretty solid coach. It's just a loaded league with coaches and money, and South Carolina isn't quite on that level. All right, Kai, let's wrap it up with our review, our one-star review from Robot G McRobot or something. I don't know. Tell the people what we got here.
Yeah, if this review isn't AI, then it's very strange. If it is AI, I fear for our future because probably going to get a lot of this now. So it's from No Thanks Please is the username. And the review is titled Would Listen, but No Big 12 Coverage. The content is fun to listen to, but unfortunately it's not geared towards me and my interests as the fan of a Big 12 team. That's the exact wording. I didn't change it. As the fan of a Big 12 team. We
Yeah.
we released our Big 12 podcast, of course, on the very day that he wrote this review, Jim.
Yeah, I don't know if it's somebody being ironic or not liking what we said about their Big 12 team,
I don't know.
but my interest as the fan of a Big 12 team just sounds like
The chat
a
GPT.
robot. Yeah, it sounds very
Yeah, I don't get it.
not human. So I'm not going to get my undies in a bunch about this. If we start
No.
seeing a bunch of these, Kai, I'm going to be really annoyed.
We will stop
But
reading them as incentive for sure, Jim.
yeah, this was
Yeah.
this was silly. This
Silly.
was silly.
Silly. Okay, that's
But
it.
oh well. That is our SEC pod. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Our SEC review. We'll have a preview in about 3.5, 4 months when we get into preview season. Excited to get to that. We've started our writing, like I said, behind the scenes. So previews have begun. Lots ahead in that department. But thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week talking transfer portal winners and losers, most likely. We'll let you know on Twitter if there's a change in topic, but that is generally what I would expect. So we appreciate you tuning in and listening, and we will catch you again either Thursday